And welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on our podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. My guest today is Jim Karrh. Jim is how would we describe Jim? Let's see, expert on and a consumer researcher, an award-winning corporate marketing leader, a consultant, a speaker, and a coach. He is soon to be a published author. Let's see, how else? How else would we describe you, Jim? Why don't you tell us?
I guess I'm a marketing messaging mutt. You put all of those things together.
A marketing messaging mutt. I love that. So I don't know that we've had a marketing messaging mutt on the show before, so I'll make sure we put some newspaper and stuff down there.
I'll work on the
But
branding for
welcome.
that.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, I didn't mention, and I should because I know you spent a lot of time on this. You've also got an MBA from Duke, which is impressive, as well as a master's and a doctorate degree from University of Florida. So it's Doctor Mutt, actually.
Yes, I am. In fact, I had people at the time in my CMO experience. Our major brand was a bottled spring water distributed across the country in some foreign markets, and people called me Dr. Waterboy at the time. So
So
I'll go with it.
that's the best of both. Cool. So here you are. You're about to be an author. You're a thought leader. You're a speaker. I always like to ask folks, sort of, how the heck did you get here? How did that happen?
Well, and as I've heard from several of your guests, Peter, not a grand strategic 20-year plan, just a series of things that kind of brought me around. So the very compressed version of this was I had come out of my MBA program and spent a couple of years in banking, decided that that didn't feel quite right. And so I just had kind of this wild idea with a friend and had been a Fuqua School of Business classmate of mine. We thought we would go into the very small market because that's all we could afford, small market radio business. So we found some struggling, a tiny market, AM and FM radio stations, and thought we would do that until either there was something better to do, or we ran out of money, or somehow made it into a big business. It was more of there was something else from my business partner wanted to do in a family business. And so we sold that. And I was trying to think at the time, I was still in my late 20s, and what's to do next? And I remembered my first paying legal job in high school was I was a AM radio disc jockey. I used that to put gas in my car. And so I think I had this deep seated dream of being some sort of media mogul. And that didn't quite pan out. But I thought back to my business school experiences, and I thought, those professors, that's the coolest job in the world, right? They have their area of expertise. They write some things that a few people read. They do some consulting. Ties are optional. I'd like that gig. So after selling the radio stations, I went back to get a PhD and launched a teaching career, which eventually brought me to Little Rock, Arkansas. And so at that time, I'd been doing some writing and doing a little bit of consulting, actually made tenure. But then the year after that, Peter, I was approached by one of my consulting clients. He owned two businesses and was buying a third, that bottled spring water brand, and said, "Hey, Jim, why don't you get a real job, leave this teaching stuff, and join this team that we're putting together to combine the businesses and be my head of marketing?" And I was really intrigued by the idea, and so I was a chief marketing officer for 4 years, and then in the past, exited that in the end of 2007. And so at that time, I spent a little time in some ad agency work, but basically have been consulting through another group and on my own, and developing more speaking opportunities and the like since that time. So it's been a combination of research work and the PhD background and understanding audience psychology, consumer psychology, some time actually as a marketing leader and trying to
Yep.
wrangle all of that together, and then spending time now with people out in the field, a lot of field salespeople, marketing leaders, and business leaders.
So what made you decide, and then once you decided, what were the first couple of things you did to move from safety and security. So first in the academic world to the corporate world, and then in the corporate world to sort of this space. So at what point do you wake up as a CMO and say, I want to go off on my own, and I'd like to do some speaking and write a book, and you maybe use the term thought leader, maybe you didn't, but what made you decide to sort of take the leap and say, yeah, you know what, this seems better than or more interesting than what I have today?
Well, as is often the case with people who become thought leaders, sometimes it is an internal drive that they have and they kind of see an opportunity or create one. Sometimes the rest of the world comes, a meteorite falls on your head or something like that happens from the outside. I had a bit of both, Peter. So it was a conscious decision to leave the safety and security of a tenured and not great paying, but, safe, secure, comfortable faculty position. And I could have continued to do the same thing. But it was an opportunity that came to me, and I was just really driven by the desire to take what I thought I knew and apply it. I didn't have to do a major relocation, and I knew the people involved in the business, and it just felt like this would be the best way to do it and to take what was a proud old brand and to try to revitalize it. When it came to, but in that business, we had a major disruption to the business. My job had been to fix the brand, and then we were also trying to fix our distribution, and we had an assumed deal. We can talk about it now. With we thought a master distribution agreement was going to transpire with Anheuser-Busch, which was going to solve our distribution problems. When we were moving toward that deal, and I was spending a lot of time actually going between our home and St. Louis, getting ready for that. That was at the exact time that Anheuser-Busch became the target of a hostile takeover from InBev, which eventually was successful. And we were done.
Got it.
And so we were not going to be in that. We had made a lot of investment in production capability in anticipation of that. And all of a sudden, I became expensive and expendable. So although I was a small investor in the business and we had done a really good job there, I had to go. And so that was the external factor that forced me to say, oh, well, I can't really go back to the academic gig. I guess I could, not the same place. But so what have I learned now and how can I best apply that? And so that's kind of led me into eventually what I'm doing now.
Got it. Talk about that a little bit, because you're a smart guy, you're talented. You could have gotten another job, right, as a CMO, a very senior level executive job that many would consider a dream job or fulfilling. But what was it that drew you into sort of this world of content, this world of thought leadership that said, yeah, that's the thing for me?
It's been a bit of a progression, Peter. And so it has been in the past, decade or so. I was actually introduced to, as a result of literally a next to a ball field conversation with a guy our kids were both at a soccer practice when they were little and talking about what the other did. And I learned about a boutique consultancy based in my hometown now of Little Rock, which is a B2B kind of a sales enablement consultancy working with a lot of larger enterprises, their field sales teams, their subject matter experts. And so I began working with them as an affiliate in preparing messaging playbooks and training systems and coaching. And so which was great because that brought me into a lot of different industries, and I was able to apply some of these skills and some of this perspective and have a lot of different sorts of gigs. And what has happened over time is that I've begun through all of that to see what are the commonalities. What are some of the basic foundational things in terms of effective marketing conversations. How do you craft the right sort of message that can generate opportunities and lead a customer? What are the best ways to enlist and feed and motivate messengers, be they salespeople or other employees or members or donors or current customers, all of those people to carry the message for you and do it in the sharing economy. And then finally, what are the commonalities in terms of management habits? So you think all the way from, how do we best onboard new people to when people change roles from being a frontline worker bee to having direct reports. Most people especially in larger enterprises, they get put into new situations all the time and they're not well trained for it. And they don't really they don't know what to do. So if they don't know the message, if they don't know a lot of those things, they say, how in the world am I supposed to tell that to someone else? Everyone's looking at me like, so what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do? They have no idea. So what has happened over time, Peter, to your question is I've been learning a lot of things, seeing these, being an expert, being a thought leader, a lot of it is pattern recognition. And so I've begun to put these pieces together and see, regardless of the size of the enterprise or the industry itself, what are the specifics there, and what are some guides that I can give, whether you're on the front line or you're at the executive level, to make this a real consistent source for growing a business.
Got it. So let me ask you sort of a meta question. So you're a marketing expert, and now you move into a very crowded space of being a content person, thought leader, author, speaker, etc. How does the marketer market himself in a crowded space? How does one achieve differentiation and separate sort of the noise from the signal? How are you applying, your sort of your own thinking to you?
Well, I can tell you, Peter, if I had followed my own advice better along the way, I'd be even farther along than I am now. So, in many ways, I
Well,
feel
let me
like it's
rephrase the question then. What advice would Jim give Jim? Whether he took it or not, that's a different issue.
well, if I look back at a little bit younger Jim, I would have continued to produce content. I went through a period of time, and just so retrospectively. So when I first came to in a still in a teaching position to Little Rock, Arkansas, and that was 17 years ago, and so I was looking for ways to kind of meet people and be establish a sense of brand, a sense of reputation that I might be able to use on a consulting basis. So I in fact looked at local publications and the like, saw that there was a hole. And this was before blogging. This was before, the internet was really the powerful mechanism that it is now. And I started writing I approached a statewide business publication, a weekly called Arkansas Business. It's really the only main outlet for business people across the state. And started writing a column for them on marketing, which we cleverly titled Karrh on Marketing. Imagine that committee
Wow.
decision. And
Who were
and
you in
so
charge of that decision?
it just kind of came out that way.
There you go.
So
Okay.
brevity. So I'd started doing that on a regular basis, and it did attract. It helped me get known, and it did attract some interest in my consulting and speaking services. I will say, looking back on that, I kind of had the the building blocks for a blog before that was such a thing. And I continued to write and do for this to this day on a regular basis for that, as well as some from other outlets and publications. I would have been I would have been better about packaging that and promoting it on a regular basis, because I had gone into the corporate thing and working on some other gigs, and so I continued to produce the content, but I did not distribute it or promote it well, and I did not put it in a way where it was easy for people to not just say, and as you said a moment ago, very kindly, Peter, say, "Hey, you're a smart guy, you know a lot about marketing, etc." And when I look back, I spent many years where people knew me as a smart guy who knew a lot about marketing. What I had not made clear were the areas where I could provide tangible help.
Yep.
Things where people can say, this guy Jim can give me some insight on what my world looks like today, can give me a vision of how it can be qualitatively better in the future, and lay out some steps for me to help us get there. And so I would say has that's always and it's something that I see now, even with very good professionals, people whom I have great respect for and who know their stuff, whether they're thought leaders, whether they're salespeople or marketing leaders, is they have a lot of knowledge, but it's still too wrapped up in what they know, not enough giving buyers or potential buyers a really clear path, or, to making it easy for them.
Well, and I think that's an interesting point because as an expert, it's intriguing to you. There's some intrinsic value in the thinking about and the solving of the problems and the all that sort of stuff. And more often than not, the user, the buyer, the one that will benefit most from the content, really only cares about the application. So what do I do, right? Not necessarily, I don't really care about the history story of how you got there and how you decoded this and how you compared this to 5 other models and sort of all that stuff. But I'm in pain. Something's not working. And tell me, Master Jim, what are the 3 easy things I need to do to sell my product faster, market my service better, whatever, whatever falls into sort of the domain expertise that you've got there.
That's exactly right. And one thing that I am pretty good at is taking complex stuff, which I do from my research background. I get that, but being able to simplify it. And I've been able to do that over time. So one of the things, a simple way for all of us that are in thought leadership positions or aspire to be a real leader, to be hired and valued for what we know, is it consistently, Peter, and I still hear this a lot, that people want to be considered, they may call it trusted advisors or trustworthy or a consultant to them. And if you look at the psychology behind what does it take for you to be trustworthy,
Yeah, no, I love that.
it's really a function of, from my standpoint, 2 major factors that kind of explain most of it, maybe not all of it, but and there's both expertise and empathy. So simply put, the expertise part is, you, Peter, you know your stuff. You've got the credentials, you've got the experience. Objectively, I can tell that you know something about this domain. The empathy piece is that you get me in my situation and that you'll work in my best interest.
Yeah, one without the other is of marginal value. So let me move to another question I've got. So one comment on what you said. I think there's incredible value in making the complex simple, and too many people sort of puff themselves up by making things that are ultimately simple more complex than they need to do to make themselves feel important. And there's really no value created in that. So that's just commentary. Where I wanted to move to you is you've got a book coming out shortly ish, kind of, sort of shortly, The Science of Customer Connections, Manage Your Message to Grow Your Business. I want to just talk real briefly before we need to wrap here on the decision-making process you went through to decide on how to publish and when to publish, meaning, self versus traditional publishing, and why now, and what your hopes and expectations are once you get this book out into the world.
Sure. And I think that there is still great value. And this is the reason I decided to put the time and the energy and the anguish into this is I do think that there is substantial value in writing a book. And that is, it helps plant the flag in that area of expertise, that thing you want to be known for, and organizing ideas around it. So you may, and in my case, I doubt that I'll make a million on the book itself, but it certainly is a way for more people to know me.
Well, when you say make money on the book itself, let's just define that: number of units sold times a couple of bucks a
That's
unit.
right.
There's lots of ways to make money on a book. It's not on a unit basis, that the way we would measure a normal product.
That's exactly right. But the book is a way for you to get, for example, a higher speaker's fee, to gain more opportunities for consulting and coaching and the other things that you might want to do to make money. And I do think there's a lot of value, even though there are a ton of books out there. Most of them sell only a few copies. But if you can do a decent job with your prototypical buyer, then the book has a special place. There are a number of people who have done very well by self-publishing. Those tend to be people who have they've built an audience over time. They've built a renown over time, and so
Yep.
in my case, I don't have, I've have a growing but still not huge email subscription list. I do a weekly newsletter, for example. In terms of my circle, my connections, and the like, it was healthy enough for a publisher to say, yeah, we'll publish your stuff as a first time business author, Jim. But I do think that the distribution capability for a commercial publisher, for me, as I looked at where I am right now and building my own renown, seemed to be important. It is not an easy road for those who may be considering that.
We'll call that hashtag understatement.
I made it
Yes.
overly simple in that case,
Yeah,
Peter.
exactly. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for not making that complex. Thank you.
So
Great. Great. No, I appreciate that. That's informative. Well, we've got to sort of wrap up here, but I appreciate the candor. Your journey's been an interesting one, from academia to corporate to thought leadership, and now growing that to the next level with the book coming out. and continuing to build your business. But this has been great, and I appreciate your time and sharing your story with us today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Peter. It's really an honor to be speaking virtually with other thought leaders as well. And by the way, congratulations on the podcast. I listen. I just launched my own. It's called the Manage Your Message podcast, and that also is, it's investment of time and energy and love to go into it. So I'm enjoying yours, and congratulations on all that you're doing as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a great one. Thanks. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.